Tell me when you're ready. Good. Hi, my name is Travis Mullen. I've been married to my wife Jyll for 17 years. And we have 3 boys, Tegan, Thaddeus, and Thrice.
All right, you're live. We're recording.
Am I sweating through my shirt yet?
No.
You are. But you're not on camera.
Start from the beginning.
I first met the Lark dudes at a fish taco joint in Camarillo, California, Ventura County. And I had been reading some of the material and had resonated with it about 100%, and talked my wife into meeting them for lunch. And she was very skeptical because we had been back and forth through a lot of different ministry gigs. I'm the guy who always has different ideas of what we need to get involved with. And I was kind of always looking for the silver bullet, what was gonna pragmatically make a lot of ministry happen like really well. And so my wife was like, oh great, okay fine, I'll have lunch with them. She goes to lunch with them and it's like, Tony starts unpacking like him and his wife and their vibe, because he could read Jyll being very skeptical. Tony had definitely drugged Pam through a bunch of things like I had drugged Jyll through. And he got her laughing and got her feeling like Tony understood where we were at. That was back in 2018. And right when we walked away from that meeting, Jyll was like, they were cool, we could hang out with them. And I was like, yes. Because I knew they were like our people when I read their material. All the messages were like things that I had been feeling, but I had no way to articulate it or nobody else to talk to about it. So right when we met them, it was like, yes, okay, where do I sign? So they signed me for a $4 million contract for 8 years. That's pretty sweet. From there, we got, what was next? We were getting into podcasts, getting into the different resources, and then we got into Reclaim with Tony through Zoom. We were able to really read through material of Reclaim and be able to process it for like an hour and a half to 2 hours sometimes. And there's some reclaims where Jyll and I were just like, what does this mean? I mean, this challenged like 20 years of ministry for me on what growth is, on what the church is, on what our role is in growth, what our role is in discipleship. Those are the major themes of ministry. It challenges all that. When I came to Reclaim 4 and Reclaim 5, those were about the most profound and most challenging to us. And they have changed our lives. It was about 3 years ago. And in Reclaim 4, the biggest thing that stood out to us was summed up by the diagram, which is like a stock ticker on the left, which is like up and down. Your growth kind of goes up and then it goes down, and then it goes up and then it goes down. But at least it's on a steady incline. And I actually had learned this in seminary from the professor who put it in his book. And on the right, you have a coffin with like steady growth coming out of it. And I was like, wait, what? They're challenging what I had learned basically. But I had experienced a lot of frustration, a lot of challenges, a lot of like contradiction of scripture and life from that first concept. It's like, what about those people who just flatline? Or what about those people who go dormant for 4 years? Or what about my buddy who's like gonna be a youth pastor, then he becomes an addict, but then he becomes a Christian again, his faith comes alive again. Under my old mentality and my old training, if somebody was like completely dormant or flatlined, it means like they weren't a Christian in the first place. And under like a very reformed theology, that would tell you that they just weren't of us if they went out from us. To think of my growth happening as like my death or my admission of my dependence, my inability to keep the law, or my inability to keep a super spiritual righteousness, was freeing, because I never could keep it. So I'd always wonder, with the way we were tying up spiritual formation for people, the more you do, the more spiritual you'll be, almost. That's kind of the correlation. It almost ties up a burden that Jesus points at the Pharisees and says, you tie up burdens too heavy for anyone to bear. So there's times where in our ministry, I'd be kind of keeping my cool and I'd be pretending I'm so patient, but then my wife would see the real me, and she'd see this anger coming out when she pressed buttons or she called things out for what they really were. And it might have been like her calling out plastic fruit in me, where I'm like forcing myself to be patient. You can pretend you're growing, you can pretend you're so patient, or you can pretend you're so gentle, but the truth comes out when in real life, your wife would know it, or your husband, and you can tell if stuff is actually plastic or if it's stuff God actually created in you. And so there's been a lot more, I'd say, true growth now that we're not trying to like coerce ourselves into growth and not trying to force ourselves to be perfect in some way, but like allowing God to just have time to work on us. That's been freeing and actually been more truly fruitful. I do feel like we have learned to trust God for our growth instead of like feeling like it's on us. And I feel like if you do that, God will deliver and he will do real things in you rather than you trying to pretend like it's happening. So as we're going through Reclaim, we're having light bulbs go off where we're like, man, I mean, I really said this to Tony. I go, in the middle of one of the reclaims, I'm like, if we would have had this at the time we were in Providence, we were trying to church plant, if we could have thought like this, we could have had like a great community without all the pressure and without feeling like we were failing on some level of like trying to make this a financially sustainable organization over 3 years. But we could have just been an organic community in homes or whatever locations we wanted and just been allowing God to do what he's going to do. And the most trippy thing has been that we were in Rhode Island like the last 3 weeks, and 3 different friends out of those original like 6 or 7 said those were the best days of church we've ever had and the best community we've ever had. We've ever since then, we've wanted to get back to that. And to me and Jyll, it was like, whoa, that's like what we thought was failure was like the best thing they had ever experienced. But it was all because of the way we thought of church, the way we thought of like ministry and how it had to be done. It didn't have to be that complex. It didn't have to be on this construct or this timeline. It can all be much more free and simple, like just being disciples in the world. And like watch where God takes that. As we're going through Reclaim, actually, it was actually after Reclaim 2 or 3, Jyll just felt this like click and spark. She just felt this ultimate freedom, this freedom to just express her faith however she wanted. And for her, it was hospitality. She's like, I want to do something on every first Friday where we have everybody to our backyard and we just have a big, huge spread, and friends and neighbors. This was not named or branded. There was nothing church about it. It was just neighbors and friends gathering on first Fridays. A few times neighbors were like, is this related to something church you're doing? And we're like, no, this is not. We're paying for the spread, but we're filling the cooler with beer and ice. Like, it is just a generous offering to our neighborhood and our friends to get people together. And our neighbors loved it. Everyone started saying, like, even the kids were like, our favorite day of the month is First Fridays. Like, and Jared, my best buddy in Somas would call me and be like, is it First Fridays yet? It just became like a rhythm of our neighborhood that connected people that like I would never see. During like our First Fridays, like a few conversations would crop up, like nothing I had planned, like so-and-so would hear about that we're doing something in the backyard that's like more church related, like talking about Jesus and stuff. And there was a few friends that were like not a part of any church, no background, and they were kind of curious. My whole 20 years of church was like inviting people to church. And now we're not inviting people to church and they're more curious that because we're not inviting them. Once someone expressed a little interest in that conversation about Jesus or about God's love or whatever, then we would say, yeah, this is happening. You can definitely jump into that. And so that would happen a few times. Not a ton, but a little more was happening than ever in 20 years of ministry, like trying to get people to church. Reclaim became a framework that we kept going through about 3 or 4 times in our backyard, and like it just created this open opportunity for people to step in. And I really liked that because I felt like the church needed that all these years. Something that was ongoing that people could step into. Like if I gather people around here, I would want to do that to start with and give people a stepping in point. So we had a few families go through it, and then we ended up with about 4 couples that wanted to be a community together. Kind of right as that formed as a community, then we moved to Arizona. So we moved in February, and now it's like July, almost August, and we got here and we didn't feel the urge as we would have previously to just jump into a church, get plugged in. A lot of churches will tell you like, you just need to get plugged into a church. Find a local church and get plugged in. We just don't feel that need because we feel like we can trust God to do something with us and like do something in our actual neighborhood. There's this real expectation on God and not on our making something happen, which is very freeing, but it's a little slow. Because I can make something happen a lot faster than God is going to do. He likes to do things slow. We're comfortable but lonely in that meantime, in that transitional space. We don't have the desire, but I know we could like try to just rally something together that's like pulling Christians together, and it tends to be like, it kind of relates to that plastic fruit idea where you're just pulling people from different churches, and that's considered transfer growth, like people coming from other churches into something that's new, and it's not really new. It's just moving people around. And we're more interested in actual people outside of the church, like what are they doing, what are they feeling, what are they going through, and like living life with them and stepping into that space and like being a form of good news or a messenger of good news in that. So we desire to be like watching God to bring like actual cues for us to step into, not to just try to make something happen. And it's a little challenging to wait on that. Since we moved, it's been a little difficult with like not having any community here. I used to live here, so I have a lot of old friends that are about a half an hour to an hour away. But like for my wife, it's like all new, no friends, like it's just loneliness. And so we don't really have a spiritual community yet. I've told Tony and Russ this, that like we have been visited by them more to our actual house than any pastor we had ever been connected to in person at a local church, which is worth something. That's worth a lot to me. And it should be worth a lot to anyone. They may not be able to sustain that as it gets bigger and bigger, but there will be leaders developed in regions that will be of the same mind, and it will be happening like that as well, because that's the ethos of the community. And so when you call something a national community, I would normally just laugh at that. But like I talk to Tony every week or two, and that's more than I talk to most pastors I was actually working for, which is hilarious. In our loneliness, we know this is headed somewhere really good, and we have resources relationally and material-wise that like we can lean on. But anytime you move, it's just hard for anybody. So I look forward to like when we have a couple or two couples that we're starting to get some traction with here. That'll be really fun, and then from there it'll just be, crazy, whatever God might do.